Andrea Ciannavei. She's a TV writer, playwright, teacher, and activist. And she's currently working on the FX show Mayans MC. She's written on American Odyssey, The Path, Borgia. Her play, Pretty Chin Up, was produced by the LAByrinth Theater Company at the Public Theater in New York City. And she is a fucking awesome interview, and there is adult language in this interview, so if you've got kids running around, tell them to pull up a fucking chair. Thank you, Andrea, for doing this. And you know, this is part of a series of New York playwrights that are now working in TV and film. And so I wanted to find out how you got into writing plays and writing in general.
Yeah, I basically, since I was a very small kid, like 3-4 years old, I've always wanted to be like a performer of some kind. And I also always wrote. You know, I didn't really think about playwriting so much until I got into maybe 8th grade, high school. But I had my impulse had always been to be an actor. And my parents were, you know, my father is from Italy. He came here when he was 40 years old, and my mother is second generation Italian on her side. So the idea of me becoming an actor or whatever is just like completely out of the question and just totally irresponsible and stupid, and they just did not support it at all. So that was an ongoing battle for a really long time. But I started writing, like I said, I started writing in elementary school, like really shitty poetry and, you know, things like that. Me and my best friend at the time, John McFeely, he and I used to write, like, we used to have this little like black and white notebook where we would co-write a romance, basically, like a stupid. So we would, like, I would write a chapter and then send it to him, and then he would write the next chapter, and we'd go back and forth and whatever. It was terrible. And then so I did that all through elementary school. And then when I got to high school, I was writing a lot of poetry, obviously. I was acting a lot. And then I started getting into writing plays. And then I got into NYU I did my first 2 years at the general studies program, which I think it's called something else now, but this was like 1993 or whatever. So I did my first 2 years, like all of the required courses that NYU asks everyone to do. And then by the time I was going into my junior year, my best friend, Demosthenes, who's like 14 years older than me, basically interceded on my behalf. He called my mother and was like, listen, if you, like, she wanted me to go to like study English. And I was like, I'm not fucking doing that. I like, no. And she wouldn't, like, she was a hard pass on the acting thing. So he called her and was like, listen, if she doesn't do something creative, you know, she's going to flunk out of school, basically, like let your kid be happy. So we got her to agree to let me go for writing, because she figured I could parlay that into a teaching job. So I had been writing plays and stuff like that. I sent that into dramatic writing program at Tisch, and then I got in. And so I was doing that. And at the same time, I ended up doing the 4th year acting project at Playwrights Horizons also, which was a bit of a controversy, but they let me do that. And, yeah, it was Travis Preston and Mac Wellman. They asked me to be in that play. Yeah. So I did that, and then I graduated, and I actually didn't write for 3 years after graduating. I like had a writer's block. I was like, basically, I felt like I didn't have anything important to say, didn't know what to say. It was like, I have no good ideas. Like, and I don't know how much of that was like me being realistic or just me being sort of self-abusing negative person. So I acted, I did all that stuff. And then I found my way over to LAByrinth Theater Company, I would say in 2000. And for the first couple of years, I didn't really write anything. I was, acting and did a lot of producing with them and that sort of thing. And then I started writing again. I wrote one play that was done at Center Stage. Based on a true story about this outside artist named Judith, who had been abandoned by her family. She was deaf and mute, and they didn't know it. She was misdiagnosed. So she was put into a mental institution and abandoned by her family for decades until her twin sister went back and found her. And while she was in that hospital, she was creating these like found object art things that ended up selling for like $20,000-$30,000. Like like she's like a sort of natural genius. It's an incredible story. Anyway, so I did that. And then like a couple of years later, I ended up writing another play. I think it was like 2004 or 5, around there. And the first draft of that play was brought up to LAByrinth, the summer intensive, and it went very poorly. It was literally the most painful artistic experience of my life. It was terrible. Literally, it was like 150 people like wouldn't talk to me afterwards. They were like, you know, it wasn't the best behavior of everyone, but it was not a good play. And I actually went up to Seymour Hoffman and I was like, I want you to tell me what's wrong with my play. He was like, oh, I don't know, I can't, you know, whatever. I'm like, no, you can, you will, you're gonna tell me. And I hounded him for like 3 weeks, and he took me out for breakfast, and he told me what he thought about the play. And the big note was, by the way, he was telling me everything and I couldn't even hear. It was like hysterical deafness, because I was so upset that the play was so bad that I just couldn't even hear anything. The only thing that penetrated was that it was not an emotionally honest play. And somehow that stuck, even though I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. So then I went home and I was like, you know, and the play was like autobiographical. It was dealing with things that I struggle with, you know, with like addiction and weight and, you know, our society, women, bodies, the whole thing. So I was devastated that this play that it didn't do well. And I was basically like rejected by this group that I really wanted to be a part of. And I went home and I was like, you know, really upset, and was like, I have some choices. My choices are, I can just quit because writing is too hard and fuck theater, and I'm gonna go be a lawyer and like, I don't know, that. Or I could say, you know, all the 150 people, or whoever, 100 people, all of them had the same reaction. They were all wrong, fuck them, I'm just gonna do what I'm gonna do and just not listen to anything. And then I was like, well, and then the third option was you could listen to what Phil was saying about emotional honesty and investigate that, and then maybe write the play again and see what happens. And so it took me a couple of weeks, you know, to get over myself. And I eventually took the third, you know, went to door number 3, and I rewrote the play. And what I did was, at the time I was like, you know, what does rewrite mean? Right? Does it mean just change a sentence here and move a scene here or whatever, like some cosmetic shit? And when you think about like the way I got to this understanding for myself was this: resentment. When you think about resentment means to feel something again. The prefix is means again. To rewrite means to write again. So then I was like, all right, so you should write the play again. So just throw the draft out, just completely throw it out, like fuck it, and just like write a whole play again, using the same themes, same characters, you know, just make it real and just do it over again, page 1. So I did. I didn't get any notes from anybody. Nobody would even bother to give me any fucking notes, except for that one. So I wrote the play again, page 1, and then I brought it back to LAByrinth. Oh, no, and the other thing was like, the emotional honesty part of it, right? So I was like, well, what does emotional honesty mean? You know, does it mean like you go on stage and you're like beating your breast and you're like, you know, crying, whatever? And I was like, no, that's actually emotional exhibitionism. So to me, emotional honesty meant being like very real and very honest about the things that you don't want people to know about you, or the things that you're ashamed of, or that you hide from yourself or from other people. And everyone does this. I don't think I'm particularly special in any way. So I told that story with that in mind, and then brought the play back to LAByrinth again the next year. And I remember that day very clearly because Eric Bogosian's play went up right before me. So everyone was there to see his fucking play. And I love Eric, whatever. But I was like, oh my God, like, so we're gonna like love his play and then I'm gonna fucking eat shit in front of all these people again. And but anyway, his play happened. Then my play, and I could hear people talking shit about me before the play even started. They were annoyed. They're like, oh my God, she's going to make us sit through this fucking play again, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of shit talk. And then I did it. The play happened. And the response was 180 degrees in the opposite direction from the year before. And I remember Phil standing up and looking at me and being like, that's how you fucking rewrite a play. And he walked out to have a cigarette. And I was like, fuck you all. I was very happy, you know. And I was very, you know, it was a big a hurdle that I cleared there. And a couple of days later, I got a phone call from John Ortiz, and he was like, we'd like to do your play at the Barn Series at the Public Theater. And this was the first time I've ever had a play read anywhere that I didn't produce myself. I'd always done my own work. So I was really happy about that. And then after the Barn Series happened, I got another phone call from John. He was like, we would like to produce your play at the Public as a development production. This was in 2007 by this time. And I was like, oh my, like this was a big deal, right? So I did it and it went really well. And, you know, and then so this was like 2007. So by 2008 rolls around and I got a job working for Tom Fontana, doing this, like being a project coordinator for these writing workshops for wounded warriors, like, you know, veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, and also their family caregivers separately. And Tom is, for whoever doesn't know, he's been around in TV for a really long time. Like his first show was St. Elsewhere's. He created Oz. Like he created like the first cable drama for HBO, basically. And he's a lion of TV and a mentor of mine. And so I was working for him for 2 years doing that. I was making $18 an hour, schlepping all over the country, literally going to Germany to do these things. And it was very fortunate to have that job. And out of nowhere one day he was like, would you like to write an episode for the show I'm doing called Borgia for Canal Plus in Europe? And I was like in a mid-bite of a sandwich when he asked me that question. And I was like, oh, you know, I was joking. Are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's the dream, right? And I have no idea if he ever read a single thing I ever wrote. I doubt it because he's very busy. But I was like, I don't understand what's happening right now. I don't understand, like, I don't get it. You know what I mean? But I said, yes, of course. And he was very like, he was so polite. He was like, you know, he asked me as if I had control of the situation. He was like, would you allow me to give you a script? Or, you know what I mean? So I was like, yes, I will write for you, Mr. Tom Fontana. And I was psyched. And it was a freelance basis. So he doesn't do rooms, like, or for the most part. If he can get away with it, he won't do a room. He hates them, which I don't blame him. And so he gave me an outline, and that was my first foray into writing for television. Now, I had written some screenplays or read enough screenplays to understand the difference between writing a play and writing a film and then writing a TV show. It was all three different mediums. So I wasn't completely in the dark, but I was very nervous. And it was also like writing, you know, 1492 papal drama. So there was like an immense amount of research that was going on simultaneously to writing it. But you really couldn't ask for a better teacher than him. He's very patient. He's a writer's writer. You know, and this is what he does. And it sort of dawned on me afterwards is that what he does is he brings people on to work for him in an assistant type capacity, either directly as his assistant or something like what I was doing, and for 2 years. And then if it works out, then he starts to apprentice you up the line, and then you start writing, which a lot of showrunners do that, or some version of that. And if they don't, they should. But so that's how I got started in it. And that was in 2010. And so I did that for 3 years until 2013, where let me back up. My agents were like, you need to write a pilot. They said that to me in 2010. And I was like, I don't know what to write about. I have nothing to write about. I'm too stupid. I can't do it. Like I just avoided it for like 3 years. I didn't do it. I traveled everywhere. I did everything else other than write a pilot, until my friend Liz Tuchilla was like, you need to cut the shit and like write a pilot. And so she was like, I see you screaming about 15 things all the time on Facebook, like pick one and write about that. You know what I mean? So I just took a look at my life and was like, what is my life right now? Like I've traveled all over the world. I am politically active. At the time, this was 2013, I was obsessed with HSBC's, participation in money laundering for drug cartels and terrorists and stuff and mafia. So I was like, let me just spin a thing out of that. So I did. And then I took a class and I got pages out and I wrote a draft of that in Francine Volpe's TV class. And about 6 months later, I got staffed on a job in LA. And I had 5 days to move here. And so then I did. And that's how it kind of just happened. But I would say, like, I know this is a very long answer, sorry. But I think that what happened to me was like maybe 2000. Oh, this is the thing. 2008, that was going on with Tom. At the same time, I applied to Juilliard for the playwriting thing. You know, they take 4 students, it's free. The only reason why I applied was because it was free. I'm broke as shit. I have no money. Like, no, you know, master's degrees were out of the question. So I applied and I was like, oh, I'll just apply. I'm never going to get in. It doesn't matter. But I applied and I got in. So like those two things happened at the same time. And so that's how, like, after 2010, when I finished the Juilliard thing, then I went over and started writing for Tom. And then things kind of like progressed from there.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people always want to know, like, how do you get an agent? How do you get a manager? Blah, blah, blah. How did the agent come to you? Was it through Juilliard?
Well, I've also had a very hard time, you know, figuring out the agent thing, especially in theater. I think agents in theater are completely different. They're a different thing. They're not as, in my experience, they're not as clear with you, you know what I mean? Because TV agents, they don't have time. Like, they don't give a fuck. It's like, we can either sell your thing or we cannot sell your thing. It's nothing personal, but that's what it is. So to answer your question, I did get a meeting with my agents at the time at UTA. It was just a meeting, and they read my plays and they're like, oh, you know, you're a great writer. These plays are really dark. We don't know what to do with you, so we're not going to work with you right now. But they left it open. It was a very nice meeting. It was perfectly fine. So that was in 2010. And then a month later, I got that job writing for Tom. And when they had said that, you know, my writing was too dark, so I wrote a comedy. So I emailed them and I said, hey, I have a job and here's a comedy. And then they fucking signed me, and I've been with them ever since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So yeah, you know, that's just how it worked for me. And because I'm telling you, like, me trying to find an agent on my own has always been a shitty experience. It's just never worked. And even with my manager, like, I didn't go looking for my manager. My manager came looking for me. He called my agents and was like, who do you have that I could, like, maybe meet with, click with, whatever. And they gave him my name and I met with him. And, you know, he's a nice Jewish boy from Jersey. We totally get along. And I was like, you know, yeah, like, so we've been working together for, I want to say, like, 5 years.
And so what was your transition like from New York to LA?
It was chaos. So at the time, this was 2013, I had just broken up, or it was 2014. So at the end of 2013, I had just broken up with this guy that I'd been living with for 5 years. And then in January, I went to teach in Utah for like 3 months at this school. I was teaching dramatic writing. And during that time, Phil Hoffman died, and then 3 other friends of mine died, like within 2 months. As I said, I broke up with my boyfriend at the time, and then I had these 2 women living in my apartment who were taking care of my dogs because my ex-boyfriend didn't want to do it, and they trashed my fucking place. Like, they trashed the shit out of it. The dogs were fine, but they were insane. And so I left Utah. I was like a mess, you know what I mean? Like, everything was just kind of falling apart. I went back to New York. I took one look at my apartment, which looked like Sarajevo. I fucking turned around and got a pack of cigarettes and a 6-pack of beer. And I just threw shit out. I threw everything out of my house. I just got rid of every fucking thing. I called my ex-boyfriend. I was like, you motherfucker. I just, like, lost my shit. Everything was terrible. And then I was on the phone with my friend, Michelle. And I just was like, everything sucks. I just need to be medevac the fuck out of my life. Like, literally, I need that, right? 3 weeks later, I get a phone call from my agents talking about, oh, there's this show. They want to meet with you on Skype, you know, like, take a meeting, whatever. And I was like, so I did. They hired me on the spot in the Skype meeting 3 weeks after I had said that to my friend Michelle. And on top of it, I had like $150 to my name total. I was completely broke, and I've been living on the edge like that forever. And I'm sure there's many people who are listening to this will also understand. I had nothing. And so I got this job at the very end of the very last string of the very last rope. And they were like, yeah, we'll see you in a week. So I had 5 business days to get my shit together and go to LA. So I got somebody to sublet my apartment. My cousin had offered to take care of my dogs. I put a bunch of shit in a bag. My friend Liz lent me a bunch of money to get a plane ticket just to get out there. Like, I couldn't even afford to get to the job. So I had to, like, borrow this money to get to the job. And then I got here, I stayed at my friend's house for a month, started the job. And I, at the time, I wasn't sure that I was staying. I didn't know what I was doing. But about a month in, you know, my cousin was like, oh, I don't want to watch the dogs anymore. That's a whole other story. The dogs came out here. You know, they're 275. Well, Athena's not with me anymore, but, you know, 2 big dogs. And I was like, you know, wherever they are, I'm going to be. Why the fuck am I going back to New York anyway? Everything sucks there. You know what I mean? Like, it was terrible. And I'm like, LA is nice. Like, you know, I got over myself about LA a long time ago. So I was like, sure. All right. So then I had like a very short time to find an apartment that could like take care of me and the dogs. And everyone in LA says, oh, LA is such a dog friendly town. It's not. They're lying to you. Like, landlords they don't fucking care. Like, they don't like big dogs. It's a problem. But I did find somebody to let me use their apartment for a month over July 4th weekend that summer. And so then in the meantime, I was still waiting for NBC to pay us. I was working, you know, 12 hours a day, and NBC hadn't paid us for 2 months. So I was like, I had to like find a real place to live. And I eventually found the house that I live in now. And, you know, everything eventually became fine. But that transition was, it was a mixed bag. There was some like soft landing aspects of it. And then others were like extremely dramatic, you know what I mean? And expensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it was in a rush. Like, I had, you know, it was like,
and it's always, I've heard that so many times, just like you're in New York one minute and they're like, or even if you're in LA and it's tomorrow you're in the writer's room or whatever, everything changes.
They do it real quick like that. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you drive? Yeah.
Drive from New York?
Did you know how to drive?
Oh yeah, no, I grew up in Massachusetts. So the minute I could drive, I got my license. I was like, I'm out the door. I couldn't wait. I wanted my license since I was like 9 years old.
Yeah, now it doesn't really matter with Uber and everything, but
yeah, I know. Well, to me, I'm like, I will not let anyone drive me. I refuse. I resent the shit out of it if I have to. I don't like it.
So no limos for you?
I'll make some exceptions, but generally, I do not like to be driven anywhere.
Or yeah, town cars, explorers, whatever.
Yeah, sorry about my dog.
Yeah, so you've been on a bunch of shows, and are you still in the room right now, or are you on hiatus?
We're on hiatus. So we started working on Mayans, I want to say like end of December last year, 2019, and then we worked not through the holidays. We picked up after the holiday, and then the first stay-at-home order came down on March 13th. That was the day that I was going into outline for an episode that I was writing for the show. So we all just like went home and we started like working on Zoom and that sort of thing. So we continued until mid-July, and we turned everything in, and now we're on hiatus. So I've been doing a lot of development work and that kind of thing.
How are they doing production?
Well, they were supposed to start shooting in the beginning of April. But that obviously didn't happen. So they actually started, I want to say mid-October, and it's a, you know, reduced set, you know what I mean? There's no craft services. Everyone's in a, you know, face mask and shields, and you have somebody there yelling at everybody about distancing and stuff. And they have to get tested a lot with Disney. So they're pretty strict about the protocols. And I have not been on set, so we're not, you know, they have one person who's there in the writing capacity, and you know, we go to the table reads on Zoom, but that's really it.
When does it air?
Oh, I have no idea. Yeah, I don't know shit about it.
I just have no idea. Fall in love.
Because it's all like, you know, there's an element of uncertainty because it all is dependent on everyone not getting sick. Like if somebody gets sick, we're fucked. So it's like, you know, can't really make plans too far into the future. You can kind of do the best. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know one of the things that you do is coaching, both in groups you do classes and also one-on-one, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I do. I don't do classes regularly, but I do them. I split them up into sort of like 2 groups. One is like for people that don't know quite what their show is yet, but they have like some elements of it and they just need like, you know, someone to like kind of walk them through developing it into like a show with an engine and stuff and characters and, you know, that kind of thing. And then the other class is more about people who know what the show is, know what the characters are, and now are gonna like, they have to learn how to like beat out their scenes, beat out the episode, write an outline, and then go to script. And I'm very like, I'm an evangelist about doing beats and writing outlines, because my first, I mean, you know, as I said with Tom, I never was in a room, so I didn't know about putting shit up on a board and, you know, brainstorming with a room or, you know, beats and shit. All I knew was like, here's an outline. So I knew what an outline was, and I knew I could write one, but I just didn't know all this other stuff. So when I got my first job here in LA for American Odyssey, I was on NBC. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I had no idea. I was very much thrown into the deep end of the pool. And I knew that I could write an outline. And I knew I could write a script, but everything up until that point, I was like, you know, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So I figured, you know, there are lots of classes that bring in like page generation type stuff, but I've never seen a class that's like, this is how you write beats. This is how you put beats up on a board. This is how you, you know, weave them, put them into 4 acts or 3 acts if it's a half an hour. And this is how you write an outline. And you do only that stuff. And then when you're done, that's when you start writing a script, and not beforehand, you know, because I think a lot of writers, they think they know everything. They think they not know everything, but they think they know everything about their story, and they think they have everything worked out in their heads, and then they don't. So then when you go straight to script, you start writing, eventually you're going to hit the page where you're like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I've been. I'm fucked. And you give up, and then you start shopping on Amazon or doing some other stupid thing. And you don't finish the script, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's one reason. But the second reason is, I do not want writers to go into a room not having seen a beat board before, or not having ever built one before. And then also not ever having pitched out beats to a room before. So I make people do that in my classes, so that even if they're not like the best at it, or they don't feel exactly comfortable about it, it's not the first time that they're doing it is not in a professional situation. That's what I'm trying to like steer them away from, so that they feel a little more comfortable about it. Because, you know, your first job is already stressful enough. Writing for TV is already stressful enough. You don't need this extra added nightmare of not knowing something that's really teachable. You know what I mean? And I don't know about NYU. I don't know what they do anymore. But I taught at a college level, and they never were like, oh yeah, teach the kids beats. They wanted me to teach them how to write spec scripts of, you know, shows that already existed, and which nobody even fucking reads anymore. The only people that read those are, you know, the people who do fellowships. So it's completely useless. And it makes me very angry, because you are charging these kids, what, 60 grand a year? You know what I mean? To be a writer, like literally it's criminal. So, so that's my class. And then I do, you know, one-to-one, I read outlines, I will read beats if you have them, I'll read scripts. And what I usually do with scripts is I put my notes in the script, like, you know, I take PDF and I type them in so they can read my handwriting, because my penmanship sucks. And then I'll meet with them for an hour by video and sort of pitch ideas out to them if they want that, go over any notes they don't understand or want more to talk about more, or whatever it is. And yeah, so I do that.
And have you done any feature writing, or are you focusing mainly on television?
Oh, I've been focusing on TV for the most part. I've started to get into feature writing. I did have a feature that I have to start writing. I did beat it out, and I have to like do the outline part of it and everything. But I have been starting to take like meetings to write features. I had one this week about this project that is about this woman who wants to become an opera singer or whatever. So, you know, I'm starting to move into that a little bit more. But I think, you know, the majority of my work has been for television.
Yeah. Great. So I guess just in wrapping up, what would your advice be to playwrights that want to work in TV and then want to come out in LA? Like, what would be the best thing for them?
I think that's a really good question, because now it's such a weird time right now. Everything is very strange. I would say that the thing that, you know, I'll put it this way, like, I'll get to the writing part. In your life, make sure you have as little crises going on as possible. Like, make sure your life is settled and taken care of as best as you possibly can, because I did not do that, and it was a pain in the ass. Like, I literally was constantly distracted because I was broke all the time, or had this thing going on, or that's, you know, like all these other things that distract you from writing. And so, and I had to grow up. So I, you know, grow up basically is the first thing, if that's a problem. You know, no judgment. I've done all of the bad things. Pay your taxes. And then I would say, like, you know, in terms of writing, like, you know, to me, making community with other writers is really important. Being generous with your time not to an abusive point, but, like, you know, not being stingy with your energy and time and, you know, support of other people. And aside from that, like, really the only thing you have control over is your writing. You know, I have been in, like, you know, I've been writing since 2010, and I am at, like, a sort of the beginning of the upper level, whatever, part of a TV of being in a room. But, you know, there have been times where, like, I would work for a year and then not work for a whole year before, it would be a whole year before I get another job. And that's very, that could be very destabilizing, because you're going on all these meetings and the feedback is good, but you're not necessarily landing that job. And your agents will tell you some bullshit. It's always like, oh, you know, they had to do a diversity hire. Like, that to me is a garbage, like, that's garbage. It's never true. And I just completely reject that idea. And so, but you start to question, like, well, are they being honest about, like, why I wasn't hired? Or, you know, you start to question yourself, right? And it can be very, you can go into a dark place where you're like, fuck, like, I'm running out of money. Like, should I just leave this shit and just go get a, you know, all that stuff. And I remember there was one point where I was in that place, and I had called a friend of mine who was a writer here, and I was like, I don't know what to do. Like, you know, what do I do? And he's like, you know, really, the only thing you have control over is writing. So just write. So I would say that, write, have your pilots, you know, write your pilots. If you don't want to be in a room and you want to go into development, write your pitches for your shows, like, get that stuff ready. And have more than one, because if you run into a manager or an agent, if you don't already have one, but, you know, if you do have one, they're going to ask you for what else do you have. They're going to want more than one thing. And if you have more than one thing, that actually increases your ability to be submitted for more stuff, because, you know, one script is not going to be perfect for all of the things that they could possibly submit you for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know, like, to me, I was afraid of LA for a really long time. Like, that was more when I was an actor and I didn't like myself very much. So being out here, if you don't like yourself, is a no-no for me. I wouldn't do it. But eventually, like, you know, by the time I got out here, it was 2014, I wasn't acting anymore, so I didn't care. And I had friends out here, and it was totally fine. You know what I mean? Like, that sort of thing was fine for me. I don't know. I think I lost the thread here a little bit. I think for me, it was just about, you know, creating stability in my life, focusing on the writing, and just doing whatever work I need to do for myself to, like, get out of my own way, which has always been a big problem, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, well, they say it's like, leave it on the page, right?
Yeah. And also too, it's like creating community. I would say that's a big thing. 'Cause honestly, like, you know, this is the thing that everyone is like, oh, I need an agent or a manager. I'm like, maybe. Yeah, maybe. Also, there's been, like, you know, this whole shit with the guild and the firing of the agents and stuff. They did a survey of all of their members, right? A couple of thousand members, asking, like, you know, what the ratio is of, like, how many jobs you got for yourself versus how many jobs you got as a result of a meeting that your agent set up. And 75% of the writers said that they got their own work. Now, and I know for me, like, yes, my agents they put me up for meetings all the time. One of them did turn into a job. Every other job I've gotten has been because of another writer.
Wow. And so with that, that statistic in the last year or so since the breakup with the WGA and the agencies, or was that just in general?
Well, that was a talking point when we began the breakup, you know, because of their packaging deals, did not have the incentive to work as hard for you to get you work. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, so in that was a pattern that I started to notice. And that's not, I'm not talking smack on my agents. I love them and they've been very good to me. But it also is true that Tom, Jessica Goldberg, you know, all of them, I had to jump through hoops. My script needed to be read. They had to like it. The studios had to read it and approve of me. They had to like it. So it's not like, no one's just going to hand you a job and be like, oh, here you go. You know what I mean? Like, you do have to earn it to some degree. It does come down to the writing. But it's also true that, like, your networking, your community is the people that are going to hire you. And I know that there's some, like, you know, I know that networking has a bad reputation, or it's a loaded term. People feel like it's, you know, smarmy or gross or whatever, or transactional. But I think that, to me, and I used to feel that way also, but I think that I really like to help people. If I can get somebody a job, I would prefer to get somebody a job than prefer not to get somebody. You know what I mean? Like, I would prefer to help you. That makes me feel good. If you get a job because of, like, a relationship I have, that would make me very fucking happy. You know what I mean? So, and I think there's a lot of people who feel that way also, you know? So yeah, it's like, you know, one of the things that sort of switched for me is, like, when I go on these generals, or when I go for showrunner meetings, or I go to meet writers or whoever, they're human beings first, always. And whether they ever hire me or not hire me is completely none of my business. They know I'm a writer. They know what I want. You know what I mean? It's not, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't have any shame in sending emails to a bunch of people, or in the past where I would email, you know, a bunch of writers who were in the position of hiring and saying, like, hey, if you have anything that I would be right for, please let me know. Or if you know of anything. And it's not like, I would never nag them. It would never be like, oh, hey, did you know, none of that. It just was like sending up a flare being like, I'm looking for work. And at some point it would materialize, and not even necessarily writing work, but just any work at all, you know?
Yeah. One last question is, because you're talking about meetings and everything, and I hear a lot of people talking about, like, how are you in a room, how you should do a meeting, and there's formulas and some suggestions and advice. And, you know, how did you come up with your own way? Because I mean, I know that you're supposed to be authentic in a room, right? They want to see who you are,
Right.
but, you know, within boundaries. And you seem to be a pretty authentic person. And so how did you sort of come up with your way of doing it?
Do you mean like being in meetings, or being in an actual room?
Going to a meeting.
Oh, going to a meeting. Well, I really like talking to people, and I do my homework. Like, if I'm going to a studio that I know what shows they've done or movies they've done, I watch them. You know, I had a meeting with Westworld over the summer. I watched all 3 seasons of the fucking show. I took notes on everything. I watched the original movie. I knew everything. And I went in and talked about the show. And so, like, you start there. It's like, people, I think, appreciate it when you pay attention to what the fuck's going on. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, do your homework. But then also, like, it's me. Like, you know, what I've noticed is that people are not interested in 22-year-olds who just got out of film school. Like, you have to, like, have a life and a point of view, I think. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to talk smack on people who, like, you didn't waste your time going to film school. I'm not saying that. But, like you have to kind of dig deep into, like, whatever is going on with you, or you've dealt with in your past, or whatever it is, what you're passionate about. Like, you have to kind of wear that on your sleeve a little bit, because that's the stuff that gets you into a room. It's not about necessarily your pedigree. Mm-hmm. Although those things are whatever, people like them, blah, 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 but they're not really, you know, if you go, you know, if you don't really show who you are, you know, and you feel it out. Like, there's not every meeting you have, you're going to, like, bare your soul and tell them everything that ever happened to you. But if I'm going into a meeting that's about, you know, like, I don't know, some show about, like, compulsive overeaters or something like this, or whatever, like, people who are overweight, I have a lot of experience with that. I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And I'll tell them the whole story, you know what I mean?
What's your connection to Westworld?
Well, with Westworld, you know, I wrote a sci-fi pilot, and they read that, and they liked it, and they were like, you know, what are the things that, like, politically about that show that I'm very, you know, interested in, right? There, and like, politics is a huge part of my life. Activism is a huge part of my life. I've traveled all over the world. Like, there's a lot of things I could bring into a show like that just from my own experience. I obviously am not a robot, you know what I mean? But there's other things involved with that.
Yeah.
You know? It's the same thing with Mayans. Like, I don't ride motorcycles, but, you know, and I'm not Mexican, I'm Italian American, but, you know, the way that happened was that, you know, Elgin James, who's the showrunner now, you know, asked John Ortiz, who was in the first pilot, you know, do you know anybody who could write a rebel leader from Mexico? And he was like, yes. He texted me at 11 o'clock at night. He was like, send your script over to Elgin. And so I did. And
oh, okay. Wow. Yeah,
yeah.
she's amazing. The rebel leader. That's so cool.
Yeah. So that, you know, and again, it was because I have a certain point of view about things, and, you know, my writing had Mexican characters, it had Mexican American characters, it had vets, it had all kinds of things. And when they see that you can write that, they're like, oh, all right, she, you know, has experience with stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's fantastic. I love it. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, I'll have information so people can connect with you if they want to do coaching with you or take any of your classes. And it's been such a pleasure spending time with you.
Actually, thank you for inviting me on. It's awesome.